On the night of May 16th, 2025, a newly formed tornado begins just out of Esto, Kentucky. This new tornado began to destroy multiple trees, snapping them in two, and on velocity and/or radar. It showed winds were pushing above 110 miles an hour, stating it was likely at EF2 intensity right as it began. The tornado was heading towards the Daniel Boone National Forest. This extremely violent and deadly EF4 was gaining strength as it came closer and closer to town. Many homes of either poor or intensely made construction were completely gone. It was likely stated that all the tornado damage caused was not from RFD winds, just the tornado itself. Now, all the tornadoes that have occurred that day were unimaginably strong. However, many homes in Laurel County were of immaculate construction. This tornado had winds well above 170 miles an hour. And as it was seen on radar, multiple tornado warnings and a tornado emergency was issued, stating a large and violent tornado was on the way. That gave people enough time for a 26-minute advance warning. They should have already been in their basements. But unfortunately, a terrible fate was only to come. As the tornado was barreling into town, multiple photos and videos of this tornado show how violent it was. Many brick structures were pulverized. Everything was deleted. Practically like someone erased everything, like it was a whiteboard. Many homes, almost every home in the city of London and Somerset were gone. Not one home just stood. This intense tornado quickly formed. In this video here, you could see how fast it went from just a mezzo to a violent tornado. And at this point in time, this strengthening tornado was getting so violent that all the damage was only getting worse and worse. However, as things happen, more things occur. At this point in time, this tornado is intensifying so fast, homes simply vanished. They stopped existing at this point. And cars were crushed to pieces, some even having mere fragments left. And in some cases, multiple cars were flattened down to their bare chassis. Multiple trees were taken down, well over 1,000, as the tornado tracked into Daniel Boone National Forest. Multiple structures within the towns of Somerset and Whittle simply vanished. Not one trace of the remaining town was there. Every hint that the tornado was on the ground was making it much more obvious. Homes vanished, cars mangled, like they were nothing. And this strange tornado had multiple shapes. It went from a simple tiny funnel to an L-shaped tornado, zigzag, wedge, you name it. This tornado is a shift-shaping beast. And it was stated that the tornado was likely EF3 to EF4 intensity in this video here. It reaches peak intensity near Somerset, but that's besides the point. This violent tornado was causing some of the most worst damage possible. And even though it was stated that a possibly violent or weak tornado was on the ground, that weak statement was well above the categories of EF4. It was at this point that the tornado was at EF5 intensity. And even though it wasn't rated as EF4 or EF5 the next day, its rating was initially EF3. However, on May 17th, the National Weather Service in Paducah, Kentucky, upgraded the rating to EF4, stating that multiple homes simply vanished off the face of this earth. Cars were mangled beyond recognition, and it was estimated that winds were estimated near 170 miles an hour. Even though this violent tornado was scraping homes off the face of the earth, it was also creating immense damage to large structures as it passed by the towns of Somerset. And every large structure that once stood was pulverized. The airport near London and Corbin, every structure nearby vanished. This footage here was taken near the London, Kentucky and Corbin, Kentucky airport, showing the massive storm. At first, the power cuts off and it starts to rain intensely. The atmosphere got much more volatile, and the tornado was spinning faster. The speed that it was traveling at was estimated to be near 70 miles an hour. However, this violent, fast-moving tornado was simply getting stronger. But the day's outlook showed an enhanced risk. The day didn't really have a note saying strong tornadoes were going to hit Kentucky. Now, that will be for another discussion. This storm that produced the monster tornado was very large. However, the main storm was only to come. On May 16th, a convective outlook was upgraded to an enhanced risk, originally slight, for most portions of Kentucky and Indiana. Then, I believe it was upgraded to moderate. This was a statement saying large tornadoes, hail, and damaging wind gusts above 60 miles an hour are very possible. And even though that this hit did not hide any factors, there was a simple thing that was not said. And multiple well-built or engineered structures were swept clean of debris, leaving no trace of once what was there. Many cars were thrown very far, up to 100 yards. In some cases, they just simply vanished. Even though the storm was very strong, it was going to get much worse. And as the tornado was entering Somerset, multiple deaths were reported from Whittle and Esto, and the tornado was barreling down on the town of Somerset. Even though this point in time, the tornado was intensifying. Here, the tornado is entering on the far left-hand side. You'll be able to see it after some brief power flashes. Keep an eye on the left side. You might be able to get a brief glimpse. At this point, the tornado was intensifying so much so debris was raining down like it was nothing. Homes were vanishing, and even though large percent of the structures in towns were destroyed. Even though that factor is noted, multiple trees were grinded so badly that they were sanded like it was nothing. It's like getting sandpaper and rubbing it against a rock, or, as I like to say, some lighter objects, like food. It just turned to dust. And multiple homes were grinded down to nothing but dust, or piles of dirt. Multiple areas of trenches were spotted in the ground. That was in a process called ground scouring. At this point in time, the tornado was so violent, homes were pulverized to dust. And even though that this tornado is violent, that doesn't mean it weakened. It did briefly weaken for a couple seconds before intensifying to EF4. And I just can't tell you the destruction, devastation that the people of London had to witness. And the tornado is tracking into London, Kentucky. Up to 20 deaths were reported in Laurel County because of this potential tornado. Now, this quote-unquote potential tornado was warned very fastly because they wanted to avoid any disasters or lawsuits. The tornado was entering Somerset and London. After it passed by London, it too would weaken and dissipate. Now, at this point in time, the tornado was so strong, homes simply vanished off the face of this earth. And in one home, an elderly couple was hanging out, and they were sheltering because of the tornado that they heard was on the way. Both victims were torn out of their home and lost both their arms as they were gripping tightly onto each other. And this would be the most gruesome injury yet. But if you think that's just the end, it's not. The tornado was so powerful that trees were ripped out of the ground, grass was torn, and pavement was briefly stripped off the road. Many cars or homes were gone. And what once was a happy and thriving city or county turned into a living nightmare. Homes vanished off the face of the earth. Cars were mangled down to their bare chassis. And even though the destruction was the worst, it was not the most intense. Most intense likely came from the tornado the previous month, or I should say, the same month. Most intense tornado was likely the London, Somerset, Kentucky EF4. But that's far from the truth. It was actually the Diaz EF4 from March. And in this drone footage, you can see the aerial damage that it left behind. Multiple trees were just laid down. Everything was gone. The storm was so powerful, the homes were scrubbed clean off the earth. And even though multiple manufactured mobile homes were destroyed, that doesn't take away from the fact that multiple well-built homes were shredded beyond recognition. And this tornado had a mostly forested track. However, that changed very quickly. Within the first few miles of its path, it began to produce violent damage. And even though the tornado was extreme, the outpouring of loving and caring support from all over the world was not extreme, because people actually started to help. Cleanup efforts were not impeded by anything. Power poles were downed, and this tornado began near Esto. Here, watch this brief animation of the tornado's life cycle as it went past the Pulaski County Park. The tornado was among the worst of the entire year. It was not brief, lasted 2 hours, but this was the impossible EF4.